Hello there ladies and gentlemen, I'm Paul TX141 Walsh, welcoming you to an all new Ace in a Day gameplay for the arcade mode of War Thunder. In today's episode, by popular demand, we shall be reviewing the Arsenal V.G.33C-1, a French fighter aircraft coming to tier of 2 and a battle rating of 2.3. To provide you with a brief historical overview as to this aircraft, we begin thus. In 1936, the French Air Force issued a specification for a light fighter of wooden construction that could be built quickly en masse in order to help raise the number of modern French aircraft types in service. Arsenal d'Aéronautique, or Arsenal in short, put forward their VG-30 design. Its name was derived from the lead engineer, Michel Vernis, i.e. the V, and designer, Jean Gaultier, the G. The plane itself was an all-wooden low-wing monoplane design armed with a singular 20mm Hispano-Suiza HS-404 cannon firing through the propeller hub, backed up by four 7.5mm MAC 1934 machine guns as mounted two to each wing. It was intended that the plane be powered by the Potez 12DC flat 12 air-cooled inline engine, but the development of this engine was proving difficult. Therefore, the VG-30 prototype was powered by the 690 horsepower Hispano-Suiza 12 XCRS liquid-cooled V12 engine when it flew for the first time on the 1st of October 1938. Subsequent test flights proved successful, showing the plane to be faster than the Morane-Saulnier MS-405. Development was to continue as a result of this success, starting with the need to find a suitable replacement engine for the Potez engine. The VG-31 design followed, filled in a reduced wing surface area and was powered by the 860 horsepower Hispano-Suiza 12Y31 engine. In parallel, the VG-32 design was being developed. This was to keep the original wing from the VG-30, but also featured the more powerful American Allison V1710C15 liquid-cooled V12 engine with a total power output of 1054 horsepower. It should also be noted that this engine was to feature a supercharger, improving its performance up at higher altitude. The VG-31 prototype demonstrated excellent performance during its test flights in the first half of 1939. Meanwhile, the VG-32 prototype was only completed in 1940 and was captured by the Germans before it could undergo trials. The VG-33, as depicted on screen today, was to follow the VG-31, its prototype flying for the first time on the 25th of April 1939. In essence, it was a refined version of the VG-31 design as powered by the same Hispano-Suiza 12Y31 engine. Despite the limited engine power, the plane could reach a top speed of 558 km an hour or 347 miles per hour at an altitude of 5,200 metres, 17,060 feet, and had a service ceiling of 11,000 metres or 36,090 feet. Based on the plane's performance in the test flights, the French Air Force placed a production order for 220 VG-33s in September of 1939, raising this to a grand total of 1,000 by the end of the year. Unfortunately, by the start of the Battle for France, i.e. the 10th of May 1940, only 12 aircraft had actually been completed, and by the conclusion of the German invasion, at least 160 aircraft were still awaiting engines on the assembly line, but these were to never arrive due to the capture of the factories by the German army. As a result, it is extremely unlikely that the VG-33 actually saw operational service. It should be noted that Arsenal did continue their development of the VG series aircraft, with designs VG-34 to VG-39. But all these designs were never to come to fruition despite their promises of greater engine power and overall performance. And as a final note, the C1 subvariant designation you see on the plane in game, I am unsure about where that comes from, as I have not been able to find any record of subvariant designation. But with our historical review concluded, let us take a look at how the VG-33C-1 handles in the skies of War Thunder's arcade mode. Today's gameplay is brought to you from the Airfield Domination map Berlin. For this we'll be using the following setup. Stealth belts for all types of armament, reasoning being the stealth belts in our experience have proven the most effective at dispatching foes. On top of that, we must consider that the stealth belts lack a tracer component, which bodes well with our boom and zoom focused style of play, whereby if we get onto the 6th of a foe and open fire but happen to miss, they may be none the wiser to our presence what with the lack of tracer whizzing past their cockpit. On top of that, our 500 metre gun convergence accommodates boom and zoom, whereby we should remember that the gun convergence will only affect the wing mounted machine guns, not the centerline mounted 20mm cannon. We are not setting this out to a further distance because of the lack of effective range on our low caliber machine guns going only out to 625 metres in our experience. A 500 metre gun convergence will allow us to have a 125 metre window in which to use the machine guns more effectively than if we set ourselves to 600 metres, at which point we'd only have the 600 to 625 metre effective range window in order to be able to do any damage with them. Our fuel load is set to 49 minutes to ensure we can make it to the end of the game unscathed on fuel capacity. We begin our analysis ironically by going head to head against a V.G.33 on the enemy team, and in this we should note that the climb rate of the V.G.33 is one of the best at its battle rating tier, whereby the only planes to match you for climb rate, if not outclimb you, will be fellow V.G.33s, and on top of that the likes of the Ki-44. Therefore you can very quickly establish yourself as the altitude dominant aircraft in the skies, being able to get over the likes of the Heinkel 112A0 and then use your positional advantage in order to hammerhead over the top of them and rip them to pieces. Now note the contrast here in the fact that we're able to take our fighter foes out very quickly of our armament, but we cannot take the damage back. As we saw in that head-to-head with the VG-33 on the enemy team, look in the bottom left-hand corner of your screen and you'll see that our airframe is severely damaged. Not to the point that we've lost any of our control surfaces, but we have picked up that damage and we're very hesitant to take any more hits. That is because one of the core weaknesses of this plane is its durability, not just in terms of the airframe, but also the ability for the control surfaces to soak up damage and continue to perform, and the engine. This plane does not like getting hit, and even the likes of an I-16 Type 5 Ishak in a head-on will be able to knock out the tail controls of this plane very easily with a sufficient burst, as I've found in previous endeavours. As a result, you have to manage your engagements accordingly and notice when you're being baited, such as the Hurricane Mark IV, they're trying to bait us down to lower altitude against the MS-410. But in dodging that and now sweeping over the top via an energy loop on the Hurricane Mark IV, we can see that our ability to conserve and retain energy is very strong in this plane. Meaning that successive energy loops, such as depicted there, will work very well for this aircraft and means that you can enact boom and zoom over short or long distances with aplomb. Now it's at this point you may be wondering, if you've been watching my previous reviews of the French Tech Tree aircraft, where the hell has this performance come from? And this is so different from what we've seen previously. The first of the Tier 2 fighters being the MS-410, which we reviewed last week, review available using the link in the top right corner of your screen as displayed now. Well, with this change in performance, you actually find now the weakness of the French fighter is not its overall performance, but it's actually its ammunition load. You only have 60 20mm cannon rounds available. Combine to that your 2000 machine gun rounds, but you'd expect your cannon to do the majority of the work, and as we're about to see in this boom and zoom pass, you're actually more constrained by your ability to conserve ammunition, rather than your ability to get into a good position. Swooping down on the Hurricane firstly here, number 1, then the Spitfire for number 2, carrying on momentum through, there's so many targets ahead of us, so we go for the MS-410, missing the opening portion of our burst, and with our cannon rounds expired now, we go after the A-35 with just our machine guns. But having closed too much and only being able to scratch that rather durable aircraft, we can see that we're only able to pick up the triple strike rather than the quad feed. Now we could say that we picked up the quad with the POTUS 631 at the start, but it would have been lovely if we could have picked up that additional 5th kill in the whole course of that pass. But we ran out of ammunition, what of having to expend 50% of our ammunition to take out the POTUS 631 in the first place. Perhaps we could attribute that to poor play on my part, opening fire at too long a distance, but regardless, the point here is now that you are more constrained to your amount of ammunition on your 20mm cannon rather than the mixture of your flight performance and your ammunition capacity as we saw on the preceding aircraft in this tech tree. And it's a huge step because now, in short, you've had the chains unleashed on this plane, the dog has been released from its lead and now you can go wild. But as long as you keep in mind how much ammunition you have and that you manage that effectively. Moving on to our next point of call, you will note at this point that we're really pushing back up towards altitude and trying to gain as much speed. That is because this plane works very well once it's got altitude and speed behind it, reaching its maximal performance within the altitude window of 2,500 to 5,500 metres. If you go above this, i.e. particularly above 6,000 metres altitude, you'll lose a significant amount of engine performance, and the same applies below 2,000 metres altitude in particular. Your straight line acceleration is impacted severely, although your climb rate still works well. Now coming on to speed, what is your ideal speed range? Well, if you consider the fact that you can accelerate from your stall speed of 150 km an hour up to 400 km an hour very quickly on engine power alone, and kick this threshold up to 450 km an hour or more emergency power, you'll find that once you get within the window of 300 to 500 km an hour, this plane will be at its maximum overall controllability and will respond very well to your inputs. There's a contrast, however, in the fact that we just pointed out that your acceleration window only goes up to 400 km an hour on engine power alone, or add another 50 for war emergency power. As soon as you hit that threshold, you will suddenly notice a severe decline in your overall acceleration. And that is because in a straight line, your top speed is heading into the region of approximately 550 km an hour, as we outlined in the historical overview. So as a result, you've already pushed up towards your top speed. As we rip apart that MC200 for another kill. So as a result, what you'll find is this plane is very good at sprinting after foes, but in extreme chases in a straight line, it's not going to work too well, particularly when you go up against the likes of P-47D Thunderbolts, your higher battle rating opposition at 3.0. Meanwhile, in a dive, the picture's a little bit different, whereby your top speed in a dive is 899 km an hour, which is quite wonderful for your battle rating tier, and your dive speed acceleration is more than enough to enable you to run away from foes, alternatively chase the likes of, say, a Messerschmitt 19 ML3. Therefore, you can be a real pest when you need to, and at the same time get out of engagements which prove to be a little bit difficult when needs be. Because the majority of your foes will want to turn fight with you, or alternatively try and catch you in a head-to-head and take advantage of your poor durability. Swooping down here on the MC200 Series 3, we note that as we went to higher speeds, our controllability locked up considerably, particularly with regards to our roll rates. We decided to avoid pursuing them any further, especially in front of the spawn. So instead we just decided to break away and use our energy retention in a boom and zoom pass to pull considerable distance. Now going for another reload, what about the ability to turn fight in this aircraft? Well, your turn circle, as we're going to see later on, is actually quite wide, although once you get a bit of speed behind you, you can make some very quick and sharp turns. In general, your turn circle is equivalent to the likes of a Messerschmitt 19 ML3 on A36. As a result, turn fighting is not going to be your forte for most engagements. Instead, you want to use altitude and therefore energy advantages over your foes, as we did there to pick up our double ace. We swoop down here on the NC223.3, the one from earlier if we remember correctly, to knock them out for our 11th kill, finishing them off. And carrying on momentum through here, we go after the Messerschmitt 19 ML1, trying to help our teammates ripping them apart, picking up an assist on them as a result. Now we go for another reload. In breaking out in a straight line before starting to build our altitude up once again, try and give ourselves all the advantages. But what about high speed controllability? Well, let's just talk about the control surfaces as standard and then move into that regard. Your strongest control surface is your ailerons, or your roll rate, whereby your ability to roll and change up direction in flight is very good. However, it is handicapped by the fact you lose 75% of your roll rate between 525 and 750 km an hour. It is a gradual lockup, and what you'll note here is we're building up our speed so that way we can start to engage the A36 and have our maximal manoeuvrability, with our ideal speed range being between 300 and 500 km an hour. Coming underneath them before snapping up in pursuit, and they decide to go into the vertical and try and loop over the top of us, but that's not going to work because we've already expected them to do that. We pick up our 12th kill. Coming back to the other control surfaces, the weaker two but still rather good, both your elevator and rudder are moderate, whereby your elevator will enable you to perform decent loops as we saw there, or pull up from a dive quite easily, and you'll find that you lose 25% of your elevator's capability when you go from 750 to 800 km an hour. And with your rudder, it's the same picture. You lose 25% of its capability, it's a decent control surface and enables you to perform a decent flat rudder turn, but you lose your 25% of capability between 650 and 750 km an hour. So in short, the only thing that's impacted at high speed is your roll rate, and it's a gradual lock-up in that regard, albeit a limiting one once you get to the maximal edge of it, so as a result you just need to plan out your boom and zoom passes. And therefore that's why we say that our ideal speed range is 300 to 500 km an hour, where all control surfaces will be at their maximum performance as we pick up our 13th kill on the Junkers 88C. Because within the 300 to 500 km an hour window, you will find that this plane feels very light at the controls and is able to respond to situations such as being pursued by the A36 as we saw earlier. Below 300 km an hour, you'll find that you're already starting to hit stall characteristics at a speed of 230 km an hour. Because this plane does not enjoy low speed engagements whatsoever, and if anything the control surfaces become extremely heavy, particularly below 2000 meters altitude. This is exacerbated once you go to extreme altitudes such as 6000 meters plus, but engagements are typically not going to occur up there for your battle rating and tier. Which is why wherever possible you need to keep your speed high and keep a considerable amount of altitude in your favour, so that way you've got your maximal performance at all times. Because as soon as your foes are able to get a shot on you, you're going to experience the consequences, as articulated earlier. So outside of those regards and the tendency of this plane to prefer boom and zoom rather than turn fighting, what else is there to note? Well, in general, because you've got the ability to sprint around the battlefield, you'll find now that you're no longer constrained to a defensive role, or alternatively a role within a given area of the sky, and you can very quickly change up directions and snap onto opponents. But with your energy retention being so strong, you'll actually find that you need to use your landing flaps, whether it be in a turn fight or alternatively when chasing foes, in order to bleed off excessive energy. It's the only way you're going to do so unless you cut your engine power over a considerable distance, as we're having to do here in order to bring down the Heinkel 112 V5. The game comes to its end, and it's time for us to take a look at the post-game stats. With our 14 kills and 2 assists, we were able to pick up 52,531 silver lions and 3,936 research points. To defeat the V.G.33C-1 in a given matchup then, I can recommend one general approach, and that is to invite this aircraft to engage you in a low speed, low altitude turn fight, particularly below 300 km an hour and an altitude of 2,000 meters or less, at which point this plane will be operating outside of its ideal speed and altitude thresholds. And on top of that, one must consider that the control surfaces of this plane will become rather heavy for the pilot, at which point the turn circle will become excessive and they have the conundrum of whether to use their landing flaps or not. Because if they decide to use their landing flaps, they're only going to bleed what energy they have in the aircraft, and as this plane goes perilously close to its stall characteristics, starting at 230 km an hour descending and hits its stall at 150 km an hour, a rather high threshold for your battle rating and tier, you will find that the VG33C1 will sit there limp in the skies until it gets back up to a speed in excess of 250 km an hour, at which point it's recovered from stall. But in that time you should have a clear shot on target and be able to rip this aircraft apart, what of its low durability, even into the smallest caliber machine guns. But by avoiding such circumstances today and focusing on a boom and zoom approach whereby we were only confrontational if we felt we had a clear advantage in terms of speed and altitude, hopefully we've demonstrated how powerful the VG33C1 can be, and if anything it's a major evolution from the preceding MS410 that we reviewed last week. The main complaint we had with that aircraft and the preceding aircraft was the fact that we felt they were jack of all trades aircraft, or they were planes that were very limited by their overall engine performance and ability to move around the skies. But now that you have that overall performance, one of the key positives of the low tier, low battle rating French aircraft, i.e. the wonderful firepower, the combination of cannon and machine guns, is now the key limiting factor. Not in terms of the amount of armament you have, but your ammo capacity, particularly on your 20mm cannon, whereby you would ideally like to have a large amount of ammunition so you can go through those boom and zoom passes, picking off doubles, triples and quad feeds. But instead, you have to manage that 60 rounds of ammunition effectively and bring the machine guns in to sprinkle and assist when you run out of cannon ammunition. If not, then you're going to have a bit of difficulty in this plane until you learn to do so, and in the meantime you'll feel that your firepower is actually scoring an own goal. And so I've been TX141, and if you have enjoyed this video, why not leave a like, comment or subscribe for future War Thunder videos on my channel. But until next time, ladies and gentlemen, take care and good luck in the skies.